Hi, I'm Angelica Oung, and welcome to the first ever episode of Taipology, a podcast about the politics, geopolitics, economics, and culture of the Sinosphere and beyond. It's recorded from my home in beautiful Taipei. For our first story, we're going to discuss the rise of political maverick Cheng Li-wen, who just became the chairwoman of the Chinese KMT, Kuomintang. So the Chinese part for a few years now hasn't been so emphasized, but Cheng Li-wen has been making it one of her political signature to say that she wants to make it so that all Taiwanese can proudly say, yes, we are Chinese. The China she means, of course, is the Republic of China, not the PRC that is on the mainland, and how that contradiction is to be resolved is something that we will talk about during the course of this episode. Let me put into perspective first what it means that a candidate like Cheng Li-wen has won the post of KMT chair. I want you to imagine if AOC became DNC chair. Actually, it's even a little bit more dramatic than that. It's almost as if, let's say, Nigel Farage in the UK joined the Tories and then years later became party leader. It's on that level. So, Zheng has long been a part of the KMT. I believe she's been a party member for 20 years now. But she got her political start in the DPP. And believe it or not, as a fiery youth activist, she used to be a strong advocate for Taiwanese independence. In her own explanation of how she made her political change, she took a break from politics to go to Cambridge University, where she studied international relations. And that is where she said she found out that Taiwan independence is basically a dead end politically and internationally. She joined the KMT in 2005, and her political CV has been relatively mixed. She's never won many, if any, elections until this chairwomanship one, but she's been a legislator at large. And I think the reason why she's really caught on fire is because she is a maverick and she comes across very well online. She's a very, very passionate speaker, a great orator. And in the internet first news environment of 2025, that is a huge advantage. But the public establishment absolutely hates her. They despise her. Even after 20 years in the KMT, her reformist streak and sharp tongue continues to set her apart, and they never accepted her as one of their own. It's really, really quite remarkable. But who she has won over are the rank and file. And basically, despite so much support within the KMT for the establishment candidate, former Taipei Mayor Hao Longbing, whose father was a former KMT military bigwig, Hao Bo-chun, they couldn't hold back the wave of grassroots support that gave her a very, very convincing win. Her victory doesn't just send ripples through Taiwanese politics, it definitely has regional, if not worldwide, implications. In fact, the ruling DPP painted Chen as a Manchurian candidate sent by Beijing to control Taiwan's politics. This is something they always say about KMT candidates, by the way, so that's nothing new. But something that is new and remarkable is that KMT bigwig and political mogul Zhao Shaokang can think of him as a more political Rupert Murdoch of Taiwan, but less wealthy. He actually also echoed those accusations. He said that there was electoral interference and there was online boosting of Zheng's candidacy coming from China, and hint, 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 pointing at CCP support for Zheng. But if anything, I think that only boosted her support because people are really tired in Taiwan of these Red Scare tactics. And if anything, he just embarrassed himself and hurt his own party. So before I get to my take on Zheng, although you might already have a flavor of it, let's hear from Zheng herself. This is her acceptance speech that has been loosely translated and condensed by me. I have faith in the KMT. The end of the election is the beginning of unbreakable unity, but we must not only unite within the party. I thank TPP Chairman Huang Guochang for his congratulatory call. I understand that everyone has such high expectations for both Chairman Huang and I. So let me promise again, we will use the utmost resolve and sincerity to unite the opposition parties so that Taiwan can return to the right path. To the ruling DPP, what does the people actually care about? Taiwan must stop looking for enemies amongst ourselves. We must get away from infighting and return to the path of healthy competition. Stop the hate, stop the manipulative division, and stop playing the China card for the sake of coming ahead in politics. We must think of the future prosperity of the 23 million people of Taiwan, dissolve the tensions and contradictions across the Taiwan Straits, and make sure there isn't war. This is the responsibility of all parties in Taiwan, to bring the Taiwanese people true security and safety. To international friends concerned with Taiwan, the KMT will always uphold the principles of equality, respect, and mutual benefit at heart. Taiwan must not be a troublemaker. Taiwan must not be a sacrificial lamb on the altar of geopolitics. And lastly, the Chinese KMT will take on the responsibility of being a maker of peace in the region. This is our solemn promise to the international community. So much work lies ahead of us. I understand my election represents so much anxiety about the current state of our nation by the people. They are worried about the chaotic state of society, and more so for the future of the next generation. So, the Chinese KMT must be strong and must transform anew. As it is said, there are no unbroken eggs under an upturned nest. The whole island of Taiwan shares one common destiny. So I call again to all political parties to remember the original mission and not sacrifice the future safety and prosperity of the Taiwanese people for petty personal political gains. Under my term, the KMT will return to Taiwan's largest party and return to power in 2028 and create cross-strait peace. Okay, after her speech, there was a particularly sharp question during the Q&A. Some say the KMT chair election suffered from electoral interference from China, and legislator Guo Guoyuan said the KMT has been completely turned red, and some new power party politicos said the KMT is completely controlled by China. How do you intend to rip off such labels? And this was Janu Leewen's reply. These are cheap labels indeed, and these are the tactics voters are the most sick and tired of and don't want to see anymore. Let's return to rationality. As I said before, all the residents of Taiwan share one fate. Destroying the Republic of China does nobody any favors. Therefore, the defense of the Republic of China must not only be the KMT's responsibility. I know the bad habits of Taiwanese politics, and I hope by sincerely tackling Taiwan's real problems, whether economic, the fate of laborers and farmers, and especially the future of the youth, are we left with nothing but slogans? Is pulling out the anti-China red labels to stick all over your opponents the only thing left you can do? This not only doesn't help, it is the biggest contributor to Taiwan's internal disharmony and stagnation. Peace across the Taiwan Straits is not only the highest hope and blessing for people on both sides of the straits, but it is a responsibility we have to the region and even help humanity avert war. There must not be strife and military confrontation in the Taiwan Straits. Therefore, do not so lightly and irresponsibly and cheaply use the Red Scare label as a tool for your power struggles. I thought it was a good answer. I like the dual focus in her address in general between the Taiwan's economic development on one part, which by the way, despite TSMC's success, we have been really, really stagnant. With property prices going way up and wages staying dead flat for probably the last 30 years or so. So bread and butter issues are huge with her and a concern with the voters. But she's also very focused on her desire for peace. She's putting that front and center. And she also drew attention to the fact that it's Taiwan's problem is not just Taiwan's problem if it rises to the level of war. It in fact could be a fuse that leads to a wider regional conflagration. Nobody knows. It's like everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And everybody thinks they know what's going to happen in war until the first shot gets fired. So I think she's very correct. There must never be war across the Taiwan Straits. So I also really like the fact that she used the Chinese saying, the old Chengyu, there are no unbroken eggs under an upturned nest. And I don't know if it's a coincidence or something, but that really resonated with me. It's an open secret that the US and China are in competition right now, with the US fighting to maintain primacy while China juggles between like fending off those attacks, but also like staying the course with its own economic development. So far, the battle has been confined to the fields of commerce, and I think that's a good thing, don't you? Let it stay on the fields of commerce. But if the contestation between these two global titans, if it ever were to get hot, it would be over Taiwan, my home. So obviously, I do not want that to happen. Under an overturned nest, there are no broken eggs. Super old Chinese saying, and there are thousands of Chengyu like that a literate Chinese person is expected to know. This goes back hundreds of years, and it's a part of being able to communicate with each other on a sophisticated level. And this particular one is really meaningful because Taiwan is my home. Like, out of all the three parties in the Meizhong-Tai triangle, we all have slightly different interests. There's always been like different shifting alliances and different levels of tension between the United States, Taiwan, and China, but the Taiwan is the nest. Taiwan is where it could all get hot. So we have the highest, we have the most skin in the game and the most desire to make sure that nest do not get upturned. So that is why I found it very interesting that there is a paper published by the U.S. Army War College that literally argues for a strategy dubbed Broken Nest, deterring China from invading Taiwan. Of course, what the Americans would say is that to threaten a broken nest is to protect Taiwan by making invasion unattractive to the Chinese. That's, let's say, you have to threaten maximum damage to Taiwan in order to make sure the Chinese stay away. To me, that's like handing somebody a gun and asking them to point it at their own head in order to protect themselves. Because, don't come any closer, I'm gonna shoot. Maybe that would work. For how long, I don't know. But fundamentally, I don't like that as a strategy. I don't accept that as a Taiwanese. I think it's a terrible idea. And it really depends on China's goodwill. Like, China is the party that has to care too much about Taiwan to risk a broken nest. But part of me does wonder, should that nest really be broken? What does that mean for the Americans? I'm sure there'll be plenty of crocodile tears about the brave Taiwanese standing up to the big bad Chinese for freedom and democracy and how we must avenge them by doing all the sanctions against China, blah, blah, blah. But under those thoughts and prayers, there are cruder sentiments that I've heard from American strategists. The Taiwanese might not be able to win against China, but they can sure as hell give them a bloody nose. I've heard that, like almost verbatim, multiple times from multiple parties. So it is our upturned nest, it is China's bloody nose, and it's America's potential opportunity to kneecap a rising rival. If this unseemly geopolitical playbook is becoming obvious even to me, a Taiwanese American with every desire and incentive to think the best of America and her intentions, imagine the average Taiwanese. We are a very pragmatic people. And after the Trump tariff shakedown and the very rude demands that Taiwan basically give away half of its chip production, including TSMC, half of the production of TSMC, our industrial crown jewel, to America, the level of trust is very low. And the level of belief that the Americans would actually come through, something they've never promised, by the way, since the official strategy is still strategic ambiguity. So, but it's not good right now. I mean, as an American, even, like, I wouldn't trust America to water my houseplants right now, let alone guarantee the safety of my homeland as a Taiwanese. So, I believe these are the global undercurrents that brought Cheng Li-wen to her current leadership role in the KMT as such a dark horse outsider. Their full name, again, is the Chinese Kuomintang. And the Chinese part has been silenced for a few years now. Remember, like during the Tsai Ing-wen years, the DPP-led Tsai Ing-wen years, how Taiwanese, not Chinese, was just memed everywhere. And it wasn't just the DPP who bought into it, it was everybody. There was even some talk within the KMT that they should officially change their name to the Taiwanese KMT, which really makes a mockery of their history and tradition and the whole raison d'etre of their party in a way. So that never went anywhere. But for a while, the Chinese aspect was heavily, heavily minimized. But no longer. Actually, Cheng Li-wen pretty much says all the time, wherever she goes, in the future, I hope to make all Taiwanese proud to say, I am Chinese. Of course, by China, she means the Republic of China, blah, blah, blah. Okay, as is customary for all incoming KMT chairs, there was a congratulatory passage from Xi Jinping, the chairman of the People's Republic of China. It's a gesture that was only skipped once in recent years, for that was for Johnny Chang. Most of the message is pretty much boilerplate, but there was a new paragraph that I found rather interesting. The century-long changes in the world are accelerating, and the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable. We hope that both parties will adhere to a common political foundation, unite the broad masses of Taiwanese compatriots, strengthen the pride, resolve, and confidence of being Chinese, deepen exchanges and cooperations, promote common development, advance national reunification, firmly safeguard the shared homeland of the Chinese nation, protect the fundamental interests of compatriots on both sides of the strait, and work together to create an even better future for the Chinese nation. So that was new, and you can dig into it there, and I think it is quite an active message, and it will be translated into policy. In return, Cheng Li-wen wrote, both sides of the straits are descendants of the Han and Huang, Yan and Huang, Yan Huangzi, sorry, and belong to the Chinese nation. In the face of the current situation, the two parties should, on the existing foundation, strengthen cross-strait exchanges and cooperation, promote peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, seek the greatest well-being for the people on both sides, and open up a grand path to national rejuvenation. So I think really interesting. They're not quite reading off the same hymn sheet. I feel like Chairman Xi is more emphasizing on the reunification as well as the rejuvenation, while Chairman Zheng is more talking about cooperation and rejuvenation. So she's still holding to that piece where she's still holding Republic of China in some ways at parity with the People's Republic of China. And that might or might not cause tensions later on, but let's not put the cart before the horse. We must not get ahead of ourselves because before she can even tackle these cross-strait issues, Cheng Li-wen has two tremendous major challenges in front of her. The first is the fact that she is so violently hated by her own party, by the KMT party establishment, the old blue males that has ruled the roost for decades. And these people, you have to remember, the KMT existed way before Taiwan was a democracy until 1986. Taiwan was under martial law, and KMT was the only party in charge. So the form of politics they really elevated to an art form is infighting. Because, before, this is always going to be the KMT in charge, right? And what they've been weaker on is actually speaking to the people, being good at elections, and coming up with good political narratives. And also, something that I think Chairwoman Zheng has in spades, but KMT politicals often lack, is political courage, the courage to speak your convictions, even if you fear that that might be touching a third rail or the median voter won't like it or whatever. So she's not the first KMT chair to be kind of established, to be kind of like a bit held at arm's length by the establishment. It's actually quite a funny coincidence that the last KMT chair that was also really pro-China was another fiery woman, and her name was Hong Xiuzhu, and she gets so spicy that her nickname was Little Chili Pepper. And she ran for president as well, did disastrously, and basically her pro-China rhetoric was considered very dangerous to the party at the time, and she was held at arm's length and effectively isolated. So she wasn't very effective. and then now she's having a great time, living her best life, moisturized in her lane. She went to the military parade in Beijing on the 3rd of September and went on a jolly tour all over China after that. She's having a great time. But we're getting off topic. So in comparing Hong Xiuzhu to Cheng Li-wen, what I can say is Cheng Li-wen is under a tougher challenge because the establishment absolutely hates her more. If you think back to Zhao Shaokang willing to basically resort to DPP branded dirty tricks to try and drag her down in the closing days of the election, you know that what I say is true. They don't want her there. You have to remember the Chinese KMT, in a way, is also the American KMT. People always speak of the KMT as a China-influenced party. It's a party that's willing to play both sides a bit more than the DPP, but it absolutely, positively came up under and is continually dependent on American support, as are all parties in Taiwan in part, right? That's how we survived. That's how we survived for decades. As the immortal Liao once said, we are the dog of the Americans. And we watch their door sitting on the Taiwan Straits. And not only do we watch the door for them, we buy our own bones. We're the best dog. But, I would say we were handsomely rewarded also. I think Taiwan got a lot of good things out of its partnership with America. I know, in the early days after World War II, Taiwan was so poor. Our girls were going to the Philippines to be their maids. That's how poor Taiwan was once upon a time. And then it is in part due to American support and protection that we got to maintain our de facto independence, and we got to be so rich. Of course, a lot of it was also hard work on our own behalf, but I would argue it's not until recently that the deal turned really bad, and it's not just us. You can look around at allies across the world. It's America is turning out not to be such a great boss. Okay, sorry, where was I? But I'm just saying that the KMT establishment, despite people saying the KMT is a pro-China party, is actually in fact very America aligned, right? When the director of the National Endowment for Democracy comes through Taipei, he visits all the parties. He visits KMT, DPP, TPP even. And it's a well-known fact that before every presidential election, the candidate, before they can even be selected as the proper candidate, need to go to the United States for an interview. They actually call it 面试. Of course, it's nothing official, but basically, if you don't go, you don't have a chance. And it's considered highly, highly consequential what Washington thinks of our presidential candidates. So how's that for freedom and democracy and lack of foreign interference for you? Okay, that was a really, really, really long detour. But what I'm trying to say is, yes, Cheng Li-wen is likely to be a KMT chairwoman that's not beloved in the eyes of Washington, I believe. And that's going to bring her a lot of internal challenges within the KMT itself, because the KMT is the American KMT in a way also. But she also has something that Hong Xiu-ju herself didn't have. She has this amazing grassroots support from the rank and file. And it's not just the grassroots support of the KMT members, because she comes across so well. She's so brilliant as an orator, and she's also very comfortable going on the political talk shows that's become very influential online, streaming in Taiwan. So yeah, she has a massive reach that way, like not just to KMT members, but also the middle voters, and then a really important part of the puzzle I'm going to mention, which is the TPP, the Taiwan People's Party. So, the current political landscape of Taiwan is like this. The DPP is actually still the biggest party, but KMT plus TPP is greater than DPP. So in order to win elections, in order to affect true change in Taiwan's government, to win in 2026 in the regional elections and the presidential election in 2028, it is vital that the KMT, the blue, and the TPP, the white, the blue-white connection have to stay together. If they break apart, it's all over. No matter how unpopular they get, the DPP is simply going to get away with it again. We're going to get a fourth term under the DPP. Yeehaw! That's going to be unbelievably exciting. So, without going too much into the backstory, the TPP got its fingers burnt really badly by cooperating with the KMT establishment in the 2024 presidential elections. So that split their respective vote bases, and handed DPP's Lai Ching-te the win. He became the president at only getting 40% of the vote. But since then, the KMT and TPP have worked really well together in the legislature. And together they have a legislative majority, and they've just handed out the DPP L after L after L. In fact, the DPP found this so intolerable, they had a whole great recall effort, which failed miserably. They tried to recall something like 32 KMT legislators, and every single one of those recall efforts failed. And it suddenly became obvious to everyone that there was a spiral of silence in Taiwan. Like, you're only allowed to express the "we're Taiwanese, not Chinese" conventional pro-TPP, pro-America viewpoint, but in fact, there's a lot of people that actually thinks otherwise. And they all came out to play after the recall, the Great Recall failed, because all of a sudden we realized we were the silent majority. So if you sense a huge swing, in a huge disturbance in the political force in Taiwan, that's probably why. Yeah, and so I really hope that Cheng Li-wen can form a good connection with the TPP, because without that, the KMT cannot win either. It's going to be really difficult because they don't always line up very well ideologically. They certainly, their electoral interests don't always line up, like who's going to get new Taipei City. But that can all be figured out later. I think what's important right now is, even though I don't see much of a track record of Cheng Li-wen engaging with the TPP, she has admirers in the TPP, and I see her very much as birds of a feather with TPP Chairman Huang Guochang. They're both very internet first, passionate speakers, principled, and they both have political sense, good political horse sense about what works and what doesn't work. So hopefully they'll make it happen. So finally, I think I'm going to end here. By the way, I should add, I'm not a supporter of any particular, I'm not a member of any particular party here in Taiwan. I am a supporter, more or less, of the TPP. I like their message of focusing on bread and butter economic issues first, of solving problems for the youth of Taiwan, of supporting nuclear energy. Come on, how stupid is it that Taiwan had 50% nuclear energy back in the 80s and 0% now? That's all on the DPP, man. But let me not get off topic. I'm not a former member of any particular political party in Taiwan, but I do tend to favor the TPP. But I am a great fan of the new KMT Chairwoman, Cheng Li-wen, and I hope that the two parties will work together well. I'd like to end with something about reunification, because that's been a really, really controversial topic, not least of all for myself. For a long time, I was actually a pro-DPP Tsai Ing-wen fangirl. And I was all like, I'm Taiwanese, not Chinese. Don't insult me with your irredentis nonsense, blah, 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 blah. You know, we grow, we change. What do I think of reunification? Because after going from being really green to kind of white to kind of blue-white, whatever this is, I became what I call a status quo enjoyer. Let's just have status quo forever. Status quo is great. Taiwan gets the best of everything. We get to be friends with America and China, and we get all the economic growth and no war and all the freedom. And so why not? It's such a good deal. It worked for 80 years. Let's go for 80 more. I've come to see that as a very, very, very irresponsible stance, because due to various reasons, the rising strength of China and the increasing erraticness of America as a partner, I believe status quo is more like a life raft with a leak in it. And you can try and patch the leak, but there are some leaks that can't be patched. And so I'm not saying abandon it right away. I'm not saying just jump off the only life raft you have. I'm saying we shouldn't be chilling on the life raft. We shouldn't be relaxing. We shouldn't be resting on our laurels. We should be looking for, where do we go next to be safe? And I really like what Cheng Li-wen says about this too. I'm going to paraphrase her, which is, too many think tanks and scholars like to talk about reunification. What are the terms? What are the timeline? What is the framework? Is it going to be one country, two systems? Is it going to be some sort of commonwealth? They love thinking about that sort of stuff, but it's all putting the cart before the horse. In order to build a strong house, you need to build a strong foundation. And it is the foundation that we need to work on first. And the foundation is mutual understanding, mutual trust. And on that foundation, we can build the strong structural beams that can support the roof, right? And that's economic ties and mutual benefit and mutual trust, something that needs to be built over time. And if you have the strong foundation, and if you have the strong structural beams, then you can put any kind of roof you like over that, and it will probably work just fine. Whereas if you don't have the strong foundation and you don't have the strong structural support, then any kind of fancy roof is just going to eventually come crashing down to the ground. I think that's really smart, and I totally give her my full support in her efforts. So I guess that's all from me for today's Typology. You can find my older work at typology.substack.com or follow me on Twitter at Angelica Oung. That's Angelica Oung. Until next time, my best wishes for listeners from all around the world from my home in Taipei. And remember, Taiwan is a part of the Sinosphere.